This is directed exercise for ERW Advanced, directed exercise number 3, attaching a processing option. And last directed exercise was creating a processing option. And I have that processing option right down here. It's already in my project. And I do want to point out that I've talked to you guys in the past about when we create versions that we need to make sure that processing option, either blind execution or prompt for values, has been selected, and that there is a gotcha we can always get ourselves caught in, that because we're doing it this way, we're not going to see that gotcha. And I guess that could be a good thing or a bad thing. But typically, when we're building a report as a developer, the person developing the requirements hasn't fully thought out whether or not to have processing options. They want to see the output, and then they say, hey, well, how about in this instance, we do something different? And that's where processing options come in. So typically, we'll create the UBE, create a version, show them an output, and then they'll say, hey, can we have processing options? We'll add processing options, but we'll many times, I know I've been caught on it a double-digit number of times, where I'll create or I'll go to run the version, and the version will be marked with no processing options. So it won't even look at the processing options. And then I'll be scratching my head trying to figure out why the report isn't responding to the processing option values, until I realize that, oh, I've got to either make it blind execution or prompt for values. So with that in mind, since we've already created the processing options, we're going to now attach the processing options. And to attach them, we need to have a processing option or a template, a report template. And so we're going to create a report template now. So the business exercise, and I'm going to do a batch application. The business purposes, we need to create a purchase order tracking report that includes the following fields: the line number, quantity order, unit cost, extended price, request date, actual ship date, comments, days between the request date and the actual ship date. And then we're going to use level break header to organize the data by purchasing order number, and a level break footer to total the extended price. And we're going to use event rules to calculate the days between the request date and the actual ship date, and to populate a columns column. So having said that, you can see that all on in your exercise document. So from here, we're going to create the report R554301. It's going to be purchase order tracking. Product code, they want us to do 55 for custom, but it's actually going to be related to the purchase ordering subsystem, which is 43. And I want it to be an update report, so I'm going to say, okay. And let's go right in here. And we're going to make columnar report with a page header, automatically populate page. Okay. And next. Next. I'll find the business view myself, which is going to be V4311R. So it's highlighted, so I'm hit next. We're going to select the following fields from our business view. I'm better with the aliases, so I'm going to do line ID, UORG, UORG. We're going to add PRRC. Okay, I'm going to select UORG. UORG and amount unit cost. Amount extended, which is AEXP. And then date requested. Okay. LMID, UARG, PRRC, AEXP. So next is DRQJ. And then ADDJ. That's ADDJ. And then we want to sequence the data by DACO. And by line ID. And we're going to make DACO the level break. So we're going to set that up as a level break. And for our data selection, where our business view date, actual ship date, is greater than the date requested. I just wanted to make sure on the actual ship date that I did select the BC value. Yes. Okay. Next, and we're not going to create a version at this time because we want to build the template, attach the processing options, and then build the version. Now we're going to shrink the columns a little bit. They don't need to be as large with all this space here. And so right after, I want to make sure this is actual ship date. Yes. It's interesting that the title is receipt date. We may have to change that. I'll have to look at the report, but we're going to add a numeric field. Click on that. To the right of actual ship date. And it's going to be, we're going to call it days between and since I really don't expect the days between to be in the years area, I think I can drop this down to no decimals, no partial days. And then I'll drop this down to, let's say 4, up to 999 days, which is 3, and say okay. And then we're going to insert an alpha variable to the right of that. So since I have it highlighted, I can just click on there. And this is going to be the comments. And I'm going to change both the header and the variable to comments. And then says modify the justification. And so all of these are right, justified. The request date and the receipt dates are both centered. So are the days between. Okay, that takes care of the justification. Okay, for level breaks, we're going to create level break header section. Now notice we did have DACO in the business view, but it's not here. So that's probably going to be where we want to, with this section highlighted, do section create level break header section. It's going to be based on the DACO. And I'm going to, it doesn't say to, but I'm going to display it in there for now. I can always delete it later. But there's my level break header, order number, and I'm going to create a level break footer. So I'm going to highlight the section again, create level break footer. And I'm going to make it a group section. And this is also based on the DACO. And then since our totaling doesn't work, oh, it shows up now. The document shows up, but so I'm, now that you can see that the aggregates work, I'm going to add a count of the document with a single overline and say finish. And then we'll have to do the extended cost manually again. And it's not going to let me add aggregates. So I have to insert that manually. It's going to be extended cost. I'm going to grab this alias, which is AEXP. So I'm going to highlight my level break footer. I'm going to go to data dictionary and add AEXP. Single overline. Change the variable name to total extended cost. So now I'm going to make this a little different than what I did before. I am going to turn this into a global variable so that I can deal directly with the output variable instead of creating a variable in ER. So I'm going to call this total extended cost. And so in the level break header, every time there's a new order number, I'm going to go into ER and do section. I'm going to say that global variable RV total extended cost equals 0. I'm going to save that. And then every time in the do section here for purchase order, actually I did it every time this printed out. So instead of the do section after last object printed, I'm going to say that the RV total extended cost equals RV total extended cost plus the BC extended cost. AEXP. There's extended cost, AEXP. Okay. And so that's the tally. Is that a comment? A comment. And then since I'm going to add a constant in here. Now I'm going to call it record count. Just because I want you to see these aggregates work without any code required. So single overline, okay. Now we're going to, for the comments, we're going to create a text variable. So under section text variables, I'm going to create one that's called content buyer. And okay, so in this main section here, we're going to go back and do some more event rules because we're going to, in the do section, necessary. Okay, in the do section, I'm going to do x equals and then go over to the advanced functions, but I'm going to set the RV days between, because we're going to calculate the days between. And we're going to use the advanced functions over here, and it's going to be a date function. Double click, and we're going to go days between. And notice it's highlighted here, so anything I double click here is going to be auto inserted up here. So I am going to grab the date requested first. There's date requested. And then notice how it's advanced over to the other field for days between. And this, we're going to grab the actual ship date. There's actual ship date. And we're going to say, okay. And so this is what your line should look like. And then just to separate logic, add another comment. And I'm going to say, if the RV days between is greater than 5, and that's going to be a literal 5, type in 5 here. Then I want to set the RV comments to equal that text variable that I created. We did create a text variable, right? Maybe I didn't. We'll wait to see that I did. So we'll come back to that. Just to save early, save often. Go look at my text variables. For some reason it didn't. And didn't take. I wonder if it was because I think the text variables are report wide. I don't know why it didn't take that. So contact buyer. Okay. So let's go see what's there now. It is there now. Okay. So back in this do section, I can now do that assignment, RV comments. And there should be a T value. Don't know what's going on here today. So I'm going to hit the add. So, okay, I'm going to hit save right away. Let's go on. Section text variables. It's in there. Let's see if I can see this list here. It is not showing up for some reason. There it is now. Okay, so I can go back to my RV comments. Hopefully it's there now. Yes, contact buyer. Not sure why we were losing it, but that happens sometimes. We don't need the else statement, so I'm going to delete it. And I'm going to save. Now I'm going to save, really save off. I'm going to attach the processing option. So I'm going to go File, select Processing Options. And under here, I'm going to do T554301. Find, it finds it. I'm going to say, okay, now here's a good thing, a new capability that you can actually remove processing options too. There was a time where you actually, it wasn't a feature, but it is now. So I'm going to add that. I'm going to save, and then I'm going to go back in here and notice how next to select processing options, there is a check that says processing options have been connected. So, and now we're going to incorporate the logic incorporating that processing option. So we're going to go back to the column intersection. Now this is going to go in, not in the do section, but it's going to go in the initialize section. So when they first create this, we now know based on the processing options, whether or not we're going to display the comments. So I'm going to say, if my PO value type in a P, oh, there's my PO display comments. If PO display comments is equal to literal. Now I can do this one of many ways. I can say if it's equal to the two different values, 1 or PO display comments is equal to a Y, then since any line I add is going to be after the last highlighted one, I'm going to say, I'm going to go to system functions, and it's going to be object-based, and I'm going to show RV comments, and then I'm going to drop down to the else system object. I'm going to hide comments, RV comments. Okay. So I want to show you two other ways to do this. So I am going to first disable this for right now. I'm going to add a comment to separate. So I can also say if PO display comments is equal to, now I can do a range of values or a list of values. So I am going to say if it's equal to 1, enter, or capital Y, enter. And then copy these show and hides down here and make sure they're enabled. So this should give me the exact same logic. Okay. But I'm going to actually do it a third way. And this is, so I'm going to disable this because there is a third way to do this. And we'll talk about why in a second. But I am going to create a variable. It's going to be that A variable for the processing option. And I'm going to call it C for it's a character. And I'm going to say PO display comments underscore A. And I'm going to make it the scope of the entire report. So anywhere in the report, I can see this value. And now that I've created that value, I am going to do that variable equals the PO variable and then I am going to make another if statement. I could have done either of those statements, and instead of looking at the PO value, look at the VA variable. So I'm going to say if VA display comments is equal to, and I'm going to do a list of values, 1, enter, Y, enter, say okay. And then I'm going to copy these again. And I'm going to enable them since they're commented out right now based on that bang mark. So okay, so let me talk about this. There is a lot of times where we'll have a whole bunch of processing options, and it's perfectly valid to refer to those processing option values. The only caveat is if they ever want those processing options moved between multiple tabs in the processing option template, then you have to delete them and recreate them. And what that causes us is this processing option display comments _A goes away, but a new processing option display comments A is created. And so this if statement can stop working. Okay. And if you have a whole bunch of processing options, a lot of the processing options could stop working if you're moving a bunch of them around. And so I have seen where in your logic, you may have to have logic in 5 different places that refer to the value of the processing option value. And with that, you might have to change or reconnect 5 different lines of ER code to get this working again, just because you've moved it. Whereas if in the initialize section, I always set the VA variable equal to the PO variable, and then elsewhere in the logic, I'm referring to the VA variable, then I only need to reconnect one line for each processing option changed, and that saves me a lot of work. So this is the way I traditionally do it, is anytime I have processing options, I will create a mirror VA variable to the PO variable, and then set them all in initialize section right up at the very top. And then whenever I have to do logic that depends on those values, I then refer to the VA variable, not the PO variable. So there's that reason. Okay. So next we're going to go ahead and save and exit. I already saved it. I'm going to exit. Actually, I'm going to be safe and say validate event rules. Just tell me if there's any errors. ER validation successful. So if I hadn't done that, it would have automatically done that for me when I hit the exit. And so now I'm going to create, I'm going to go to version list, and I'm going to create the version for this. Now, purchase order tracking. See, this is the downside of what you don't get when you automatically create it, is when I go to add it, I'm going to add BER0001 and purchase order tracking. Now, right now, the processing option is automatically set to a 1, and that's blind execution. And that means that while it's not going to send a pop-up window to ask you to set the values, it's going to react based on what the values are set at by default. Okay, but we want it to prompt us for those values. So I'm going to select 2 for values and say select, and it's put a 2 in there. Okay. Now I'm going to click on processing options because nothing is set right now. I'm going to go ahead and set a default that says yes, I want to display comments. Now it doesn't matter, we'll get to see that in a second. So when I go in, it's now been changed and stays that way. Okay, so now I'm going to run the version. And I don't even have to do change data selection or data sequencing. I'm just going to say submit, and that window pops up and there's a yes there. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it yes and say okay. And so now we have comments here. And I'm going to go back in and run it again. Only this time I'm going to change it to a no. And see if that processing work did. And if we switch back and forth between these, you'll see that there is a whole column here that's not displayed when the processing option was set to no. Okay. Also, since I'm here, I did want to point out that record count, even though I added no logic and just did an aggregate field, that it has counted the number of records and inserted that in for me. And so that's a value. And then where I've calculated the days between these dates seems to be working pretty good as well. All right, hope that works. Enjoy. And then you guys, of course, can move on to the exercise attaching a processing option for the R56 41021.